Part 62. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 614. Maybe he didn't know where Lieber was now, but as long as he was with this old friend, he should be able to stay safe for the time being. Rustam is the best at escaping and protecting himself. Cohen walked to the window and looked out. It was dark outside, and he could faintly see the lights and firelights in the huts in the distance. "Where is this?" he turned around and asked. "The place where I was born," Rustam answered, grinding the fireflies with concentration, as if they were the most precious treasures. "You're unconscious. For a long time, half asleep and half awake, I brought you back here in a borrowed bullock cart. Are we safe?" Now Cohen was a little worried. Lieber was not an easy character to get along with. Although the man in black was torn apart by external forces. But Lieber still has unpredictable means and power. That man's will and body were simply incredible. "Of course it's safe, until early tomorrow morning," Rustam replied with a smile on his old face like a chrysanthemum. "This village is no ordinary small village," he whispered. "It's the peace and quiet you're looking for." "I can't understand, you mean supernatural forces?" "Here?" Cohen asked. "I was born here and grew up here until I left." "You will soon fall in love with it," Rustam said with some profound meaning. Next day. Snapped. A green branch with leaves was broken off. He was in the hands of a strong and violent black man with short hair. He put a leaf from the branch under his nose and smelled it carefully. Hiss. He inhaled deeply through his nose and made a hissing sound. "Southern Cohen, you can't escape." The camouflage combat uniform on the black man's body was in tatters, with only one left. Some strips of cloth were hanging sparsely on his body. He held a black dagger in his hand, and from time to time he cut through the branches and weeds in front of him. This is the inside of a very magical forest. Different from the yellow-green prairie outside, this is a continuous and somewhat undulating yellow-green forest. Wow! Suddenly there was a crashing sound in the distance behind him. Someone was shouting in American English. Levi lowered himself quietly, with only one pair of eyes exposed, and he burrowed under an arched tree root on the side, looking back. "Hasn't someone already searched this direction? Why are you still coming here? Don't worry about the orders from above. There are not many manpower now. I really don't know what the higher UPS are thinking." Several men wearing yellow and green camouflage uniforms were searching here with guns in hand. Levi lowered his head and looked there from between a patch of grass. He noticed that the clothes on these people's arms had a black eagle symbol. Nighthawk, he knew the sign. Some time ago, he combined with other forces to severely damage this mercenary group. "It seems that something new happened during the time I didn't go back," he understood clearly. Boom! Suddenly there was a burst of gunfire in the distance, and then the wild roar of a bison. "Shit! Kill it! Kill it!" a voice shouted. Bang bang! There were several more gunshots. Several people patrolling here raised their guns nervously, but when they heard the roar of the cows, they put them down with a smile. This group of rotten people will be in trouble if they attract those people from the inspection vehicle patrol team again. Can't they just be more worried? A black man spat, turned back from the direction of the gunfire, and suddenly found that the surroundings were eerily quiet. There was a trace of vigilance and doubt on his smiling face, and his hand unconsciously raised the gun. Click! A big hand reached out from his throat like lightning and pinched it. The body fell softly and was slowly placed on the ground while being supported. Lieber spat and took some things he needed from the three corpses in the grass, including guns, water bottles, insect repellent, and some food and snacks to take with you. He thought for a while, picked a person with a similar figure to him, quickly took off his clothes, and then put them on himself. The body was lying in the grass and woods about half a man's height. There was no way to notice anything unusual unless you got very close and looked. Lieber sniffed and continued to chase in the intended direction. Like a silent cheetah, extremely fast and silent. Galen stood on a yellow-green off-road vehicle, holding a pair of binoculars in his hand and looking far into the distance. He changed into a close-fitting yellow jacket. He was wearing a green mercenary uniform with a black large-caliber pistol on his waist. He was surrounded by mercenaries who were responsible for driving and bald heads. Behind the car were 4 off-road vehicles of the same style, all of which were filled with Nighthawk's peripheral mercenary soldiers. Some were holding machine guns, and some were carrying machine guns. People were checking rocket launchers, and someone even had a small mortar. Several elite members of Nighthawk all had gloomy expressions on their faces, and they were all silently checking their anti-equipment sniper rifles. Carlo, are you aware of the search status of each unit? Garen had already taken over the command of Nighthawk in place of Bald Head. He was wearing a pair of silver-rimmed glasses, and a screen of light shimmered faintly on the left lens of the glasses, which turned out to be a small display screen. This is the latest research success. It can be a high-end microcomputer with functions such as video recording, photography, recording, short-distance communication, and internet query information. This tool is specially made by them, and the Nighthawk people call it Eagle Eye. Fortunately, everything is going well. There is something wrong. The voice came from an earphone connected to the glasses. Garen raised his hand. Mark the location. More than 20 people in the 4 vehicles all began to check their weapons and equipment, and the elites began to adjust and test their communication glasses. A big fat man in a car even set up an aviation cannon that is only used on airplanes. More than 20 people carry bombs and grenades, machine gun rockets, heavy machine guns and mortars, all the most powerful weapons that an individual soldier can master, all here. It's all there. After all, Nighthawk is a mercenary group on the battlefield. In addition to a small but elite beheading team, it also has an equally powerful and huge firepower set. Group. With just such a team of more than 20 people, all of whom are veterans who have experienced war, they have been able to capture a small city in a short time. Town. In Africa, such an army is already the top elite. Not to mention that behind the 4 vehicles, there was an even larger mercenary team gathered by Nighthawk, a huge Nighthawk legion of hundreds of people. They are all Nighthawk's peripheral legions. This time they are really at odds. Without the restraints of similar mercenary groups such as Black Knife, Nighthawk. Eagle spent a lot of money to temporarily hire these mercenaries who flashed across the battlefield. Under the prestige of carrying the killing Black Knife, a large number of mercenaries actively participated. Fighting with a powerful legion can not only get a good commission, it can also minimize your own casualties. Therefore, mercenaries have always liked to join the team of the stronger side. They are like grass on the wall. In this way, whichever side shows strength will flock to join that side. Therefore, on the mercenary battlefield, the most important point is not to show that you are stronger than you. The opponent is weak. Even if he is weak, he still has to be life-threatening and crazy to make others fear him. Garen stood on the off-road vehicle at the front and glanced back at the 3 vehicles behind him. The people on these 3 cars are the real internal members of Nighthawk, that is, the real members except the elite, and they have a certain solid relationship. Department of People. And those people in the back are just here to fight with the wind. The location has been determined. A patrol team was attacked and 3 people died. Carlo's voice came from Eagle Eyes. Go in that direction. Garen nodded. When he put on the military uniform, he unconsciously had a harsh and cold feeling about him. Yes. The convoy began to turn and headed in the marked direction. The team at the back, under the command of the front, divided into several teams to surround them and move forward. Garen's eyes returned to a cheetah lying on a tree trunk not far away, and he looked at a large group of black creatures in front of him. The convoy didn't drive long before a large herd of African wildebeest rushed out from the front. Coo coo coo. Countless black wildebeests neighed and ran sideways in front of the convoy, like a wide black river flowing on the yellow-green grassland. Endless. This kind of horse that looks like a cow has two curved horns. The difference between them and buffalo is that their face is very long and their body is thinner. But no matter what, when this creature rushes and runs, it is no worse than a car rushing towards it at full speed. Powerful. The Legion's ranks had to stop temporarily. "We should be catching up with that guy soon." The bald man touched the gauze covering his one eye and whispered. "Lieber wore our clothes, no. The person who passed us had a miniature tracking signal on his clothes, so he couldn't run away." His expression was a bit hateful. His eyes were damaged by Lieber's own hands. "Stab the blind, in close combat." "There's no rush," Garen said calmly. Suddenly he pressed Hawkeye's earphones and looked back to the side. There, a soldier with a painted face walked over from the grass and stood beside the car. He was holding three small yellow things like embroidery needles in his hand. Like an ordinary bamboo stick. "Sir, I found 3 signal transmitters of the attack soldiers nearby," the soldier shouted. Garen glanced at Baldhead, who punched the car door hard, making a loud bang. "Is there any way to keep up?" Garen asked in a low voice. "Satellite, with this weather, it should be fine," a ponytailed woman next to the bald head answered. "However, accuracy cannot be guaranteed." "Do it," Garen nodded. The woman opened the laptop, and after a dazzling screen flickering and crackling keyboard sounds, she turned the computer around, facing Garen and others. "I can basically locate the approximate area, but the cost of renting satellites is too high, so I need authorization from my boss." Garen nodded to the bald man, who stretched out his index finger and pressed on the computer fingerprint input device. Drop. After a soft beep, the woman turned around the computer again and began to search intently. "Although we can't quite find Lieber's whereabouts, there's still no problem with Cohen's specific location. He has a satellite phone on him. We can locate his location through technical means. He had only used the phone not long ago." The ponytailed woman explained in a low voice. "Lay-by must be. After chasing Cohen, we just need to grasp this point." Garen nodded. At this time, the wildebeest herd also passed by, leaving behind clouds of yellow dust. The convoy moved on. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 615. On the edge of a large black canyon on the grassland, there is an irregular cocky small village nestled in a low-lying area. The village is like a dark patch growing on this pale yellow prairie. Next to the village is a place that looks like ruins, and you can see stone pillars that are either crooked or straight everywhere. Under the setting sun, it is peaceful here. Several African elephants were dyed red all over. A baby elephant followed the elephant's 4 pillar-like legs. The baby elephant ran forward a few steps from time to time, and then was entangled by the elephant's trunk to slow down the speed. Beside a few sparse tall green trees, a few giraffes stretched their necks and chewed leaves, waving their tails in peace and silence. The trees here all grow alone, or at most a few form a cluster. Cohen stood at the entrance of the village, watching a group of topless black women dancing around a bonfire. They did not know what kind of dance they were doing. From time to time, they raised their hands in the air, clapped, and loudly sang unknown desolate songs. An old woman with a face similar to Rustam's was sitting by the campfire, clapping her hands as well, and singing a few lines in time with her voice from time to time. There is a young man playing a tambourine on the side, which is very rhythmic. Someone was tapping their white thigh bones against each other, making a popping sound. When Cohen woke up this morning, he found that Rustam was missing. He searched for a while but couldn't find it. Then he left the house alone. The indigenous people outside were very friendly to him. Although they didn't understand the language, they also knew how to smile. Here, in this completely unfamiliar tribal village, Cohen suddenly felt an unprecedented peace. It's nice here, isn't it? Rustam's voice suddenly came from beside him. Yes, Cohen nodded. He had long been used to the other party's elusiveness. This village has honest people and ancient heritage. It's a pity that we can't stay here for a long time, he said with regret. Why? Cohen asked in a low voice. Didn't you say it's safe here? He touched a scar on his chin. This deepest scar gave him a different kind of manliness. I'll tell you the truth. Rustam turned his head, a trace of fear flashed in his eyes. Actually, I'm being hunted just like you. No, Cohen opened his eyes wide. Who can hunt you down? A very powerful existence. Very powerful, Rustam replied in a low voice. You may be in the same danger now as you are with me. You know, Rustam, you feel like you're selling fake medicine. Cohen didn't believe it at all. This old guy lied to people one at a time. He didn't know how many times he had been deceived. Forget it if you don't believe it. Rustam also shrugged. No more talking. The two of them quietly enjoyed the dance of the natives around the bonfire. He quietly glanced in a certain direction outside the village. As for Cohen's troubles, they are just mortal troubles and nothing compared to this, if that guy catches up again. After so many years of hunting and running around, maybe it's time to finally come to an end. Thinking back to the greedy fight, to the burial and death of friends one by one, perhaps from the beginning, no one expected it to end like this. He was tired of living in constant hiding, so it was a good choice to return to his hometown, to be born here and die here. Rustam looked at the old woman in the middle of the crowd. Don't give up, we will always stand behind you. Damn, the old woman's eyes said so. Yes. I lost everything, but I still remember that I still have you. A daisy-like smile appeared on Rustam's face again. He suddenly raised his hands high, clenched them into fists, closed his eyes piously, and sang loudly to the rhythm. Far away from the village, on the edge of the Grand Canyon, under the setting sun, a skinny old man wearing gray and black cloth clothes was standing. He was leaning on a sheep skull crutch and looking quietly in the direction of the village in the distance. There was a deep scar on the old man's forehead, as if he had cut through the flesh with some sharp blade and carved it into his forehead and skull. Fate has brought me here, Rustam, you can't escape. The old man's stature was stooped, as if he could be blown over by a gust of wind. But at this moment, there were actually two golden male lions prostrate at his feet. One lion was shaking the mane on its head from time to time, and its strong streamlined muscle fur was dyed red by the setting sun. The clothes on the old man's body seemed to be wrapped up with many strips of cloth. Compared with the orderliness of the mummy, the strips of cloth on his body were more messy and messy. Everything is guided by fate. He slowly lifted the crutch and tapped it lightly on the ground. Snapped. The two male lions at their feet suddenly roared, stood up in their original prostrate posture, and walked towards the village with their heads shaking. In the woods and grasslands behind them, lionesses began to appear densely at this time, and there were actually dozens of them. After the lions, there are large groups of spotted wild dogs. They run briskly in groups and cry like children. Judging from the number, it turned out to be a large black mass, no less than 1,000. These are enough to sweep across the grassland like locusts. From a high altitude, they look like a black cloud rushing towards the village. Then came a group of red-faced baboons, these powerful creatures that even leopards would retreat from when they got so fierce. They were running in groups, swinging their arms, right between and behind the wild dogs, making whining roars from time to time, revealing their sharp claws. Teeth. The old man stood on the cliff, looking down at the huge group of beasts rushing past him. Fate, he shouted loudly. Tear apart all those who stand in your way. It is a local indigenous language, but the syllables seem to be a kind of singing, a kind of praise. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of gongs suddenly sounded in the village. The natives hurried into the village and quickly set up spiked wooden fences. The wooden fences were as thick as arms and seemed to give people a sense of security. The villagers showed panic expressions and looked at the herd of beasts rushing in the distance. Someone was saying something loudly and shouting something in dialect. Some people took their children and hid in their houses, while others held onto spears, bows and arrows and other weapons, but most people focused their attention on the bonfire in the middle. Sitting there was Daryl, the most mysterious and powerful witch doctor in the village. Daryl also held a cane, which was made of black wood and had strings of bone chains of different colors hanging on it. "Don't worry. Our ancestors have always been with us," she roared loudly. Although she looked like an old man in her 80s or 90s, her voice was as loud and powerful as a young person. As if she had magic power, as her voice spread, hundreds of natives in the village suddenly fell silent. They gathered on the square at the entrance of the village. The men took up weapons, spears, javelins, bows and arrows, and bent arrows. Knife, axe. There are all kinds of weapons. The women began to gather together, and under the leadership of the leader, they organized the village into a circle with sturdy houses on the periphery, and piled wooden fences and bags of stones and soil between them. Pile into a temporary fortress. Daryl looked far into the distance, and she could see that the man standing on the cliff in the distance was the culprit of everything. The plague-like messenger of disaster is back. Kikfibo, this name may have been forgotten by too many people. The name that frightened everyone back then and the figure that made all tribes tremble has finally returned. That epic experience and story was a memory that Daryl would never forget. She had thought for a time that Geekfibber was dead. But he didn't expect that he was just lured away by Rustam. He was lured away because of that thing. The things of our ancestors cannot be tarnished. They are the source of everything we have, the source of our bloodline. Daryl looked at Rustam in the crowd. The two looked at each other and nodded equally firmly. Cohen sensitively realized that he might have been involved in something even more serious. He watched his old friend and the old woman flirting with each other, feeling something strange in his heart. "The situation is a little bad," he asked in a low voice. "We are about to return to the embrace of our ancestors," Rustam said calmly. "I'll wipe it." Cohen's expression changed. This time he could see that his old friend was not joking. "You sure? Is it because of the crystal document you mentioned?" He seemed to have thought of something, "the supreme document that you revered as a sacred object of your ancestors." "Yes. That document has always been with me." Rustam hid in the crowd and explained to Cohen in a low voice. At this time, Daryl began to boost morale loudly, using weird dialects that were incomprehensible. All the natives showed sadness and anger on their faces, and their morale was suddenly boosted. What's weird is that the beasts on the outskirts of the village stopped consciously and whined in fear as soon as they reached within 10 meters of the village. It seemed like there was something terrible ahead. Rustam watched the beast outside stop. "That's right, the purpose of the person who is chasing me is to obtain the ancestral document, which is what you call the supreme document." Seeing this miracle, the natives immediately cheered. They shouted loudly, beat their chests, raised their spears and made threatening sounds. But most of them were kneeling on the ground and praying loudly. The supreme document is something more troublesome than the secret of the lucky stone clock. It caused so many turmoils back then. Even if he wasn't from that world, Cohen knew a little bit about this. That supreme document with mysterious power is the source of all the power of these tribesmen, and it has mysterious and incredible power. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 616. Woo. The team's tires scratched the grass and their engines purred brightly. Garen was sitting casually, half lying on the seat, his eyes slightly squinted, as if he was dozing off. Layby was discovered, the pony-tailed woman who connected to the satellite suddenly said. It's 43 kilometers away from us. The bald head glanced at Garin. He didn't move, as if he didn't hear the sound. Catch up, he ordered himself. Touching his blinded eye, a trace of hatred flashed in the bald man's remaining eye. However, there are signs of a large group of animals gathering ahead, the pony-tailed woman whispered. Just kill anyone who encounters obstruction, the bald head frowned. Okay, the pony-tailed woman understood that if Garin didn't speak, then the leader of the team would be bald. A team of more than 200 people is fully armed with all kinds of heavy weapons. What kind of animals are they afraid of? Even an angry herd of elephants can be killed directly. The convoy continued on. Garin was sleeping in the car with his hands folded, but no one in the entire elite and nearby corps members dared to relax their attention on him just because he was resting. They are the ones who know best the methods and will of this seemingly young blonde man. He doesn't look like a young man in his 20s at all, but more like an extremely tough and powerful, terrifying mercenary. Every once in a while, everyone's eyes would pass over Garin. Galen slept in the car with his arms folded. When I came to South Africa this time, I originally thought that I would deal with my opponent, and then go back after getting the lucky stone clock. Unexpectedly, the lucky stone clock also involved a big secret. And the carrier actually fled the city early. What he had planned as a relaxing side trip was completely ruined. What was thought to be a simple trip has now turned into a long trail. And that cunning Lieber used various means to lead them in the wrong direction more than once. Their tracking experts were nothing short of rookies compared to the other party. No wonder that guy was able to live so well despite so many crises. Another set of signals has been destroyed, the pony-tailed woman reported in a low voice. The bald man reached out and wanted to punch the car door hard, but he immediately glanced at Garin and then put it down gently. How many times have you been on this journey? Lieber not only let them chase him in vain, but also continued to hunt and kill the tracking team they sent out. So far, more than 15 people have died at the hands of that guy. Give him the order, change to a group of 5 people. I don't believe he can kill 5 people at once and still make no move, Baldhead ordered in a low voice. Yes. The soldiers on the convoy began to check their weapons and load ammunition. A strong sense of oppression slowly spread, and the entire convoy was like a regular army regiment, driving towards the village beside the Grand Canyon at a constant speed. Roar! A lioness pounced on him and bit out the throat of a native, but was immediately stabbed into his side and abdomen by several sharp spears. Bloody water splashed onto the surrounding grass, dyeing patches of grassland red. This is just one of the corners. Lions, wild dogs, and baboons are flying and biting towards the native village like they have taken medicine. Most of them were still afraid of some unknown thing and stayed outside a circle outside the village, but a small number of ferocious beasts had already rushed into the circle with red eyes and started fighting with the defending natives. There was blood everywhere in the village, both from natives and from wild beasts. In the center of the village, in a clean circular area, no one dared to enter that area, whether they were beasts or natives. There were several people standing in this area, and Daryl, the village witch doctor, was in the middle, holding up a crutch with a bone chain and mumbling something. Cohen stood next to her, and Rustam. The two of them stood in a position behind her, not making any movement, just watching the brutal fight outside in thrilling detail. Cohen was surprised to find that the natives in the village did not seem to be as weak as he imagined, but seemed to have strong strength, speed, and bloody spirit. He saw with his own eyes 2 native women working together to kill a lioness. Their strength seemed to suddenly increase, and their fighting movements became extremely skillful and powerful. The men would only be attacked by the wild beasts after they were exhausted. Before that, everyone had hunted and killed dozens of creatures. This is terrifying efficiency. Cohen sometimes wonders if he has met God. Do the white people who fought the slave war know that the natives were so fierce? He just felt a garbled feeling in his heart, and he didn't know what expression to use at all. Just smile, Keep smiling, Rustam interrupted. I'll wipe it. Cohen was startled. Can you stop showing up suddenly? It's coming. Rustam suddenly looked into the distance and said mysteriously. Remember the time at the ruins of Ceylon? Certainly. That old guy was once the owner of that ruins. You mean, this old guy? That ruins were built for this old guy. Cohen reacted immediately and was shocked. He is the messenger of disaster, the plague of the earth. 300 years ago, the tribal chiefs jointly killed and sealed this guy with a document page. Unexpectedly, he has been resurrected now, Rustam said with a serious face. Oh shit. Are you telling me a myth? You were killed and resurrected? I am an archaeologist. Do you know what a scientist is? I am a person who understands science. Cohen wanted to grab the old man and beat him violently. Emil. You've been bragging that you lived for hundreds of years, and now you tell me that that guy lived for 300 years and was resurrected from the dead. Can you be more funny? Okay, old friend, I'm so relieved to see you regain your vitality. Rustam shrugged and expressed helplessness. Don't interrupt. Cohen's nerves have always been very strong, and this scene can no longer scare him. I think when countless black man-eating insects attacked in the ruins, he was just frightened to the point of weakness. Much better than those guys who pee and pee. Be careful. It's coming. Daryl stood in front and suddenly spoke. Rustam, help me. Okay. Rustam stretched out his hand to untie Daryl's clothes. I'll wipe it. If you two want to mess around, it depends on the occasion, the weirdo Cohen yelled. Trouble your whole family. Rustam and Daryl cursed at the same time. You. Don't you know how to speak English? Cohen pointed at Daryl with a ghostly look on his face. I've eaten more candy than you've ever seen, Rice. Boy, watch your mouth. Daryl patted Cohen on the shoulder, and the guy immediately became honest. My whole body was stiff and I couldn't move. Only this time did he see clearly that instead of untying his clothes, Rustam had just grabbed Daryl's back clothes. The two of them were interrupted by Cohen, and the atmosphere suddenly felt much more relaxed, no longer as heavy as it was at the beginning. Nodding to each other, the two exchanged glances. Daryl opened his mouth and pulled at his throat. Woo! A black book slowly flew out of Rustam's clothes. There was no wind, but there seemed to be an invisible hand holding the book and gently suspending it in the air directly in front of the two of them. The page of the book was slowly opened, and it was filled with black text symbols that were twisted and tilted to the left. No one could understand what was recorded on it. Hiwen page. An old voice came from far away along the wind. The grass in the distance seemed to have been crushed by something. All the withered grass and shrubs were crushed and toppled one after another. The entire earth seemed to be lightly groomed and pressed over by something. It's like combing a rug with a tool. Wow! Huge invisible pressure was pressing hard towards the village. The beasts let out howls of terror and ran around, no longer staying in the same place, but as if there was some deadly threat chasing behind them. They didn't even care about the native opponents who were still fighting just a moment ago. Large groups of beasts fled from the village like a dark torrent, and soon disappeared into the grassland in the distance. Daryl was still roaring loudly, her lung capacity seemed to be endless. But Cohen could see that Rustam, who had his hands on her back, was taking in big breaths, and their lungs seemed to be connected together. Coax. At that moment, Cohen felt that his ears were directly deafened. He felt a huge flow of air burst out from the black pages floating in the air. This airflow creates a huge pressure, facing the huge pressure from the distance. The surrounding natives were wrapped up in this pressure. They prostrated themselves on the ground, threw away their weapons, and began to sing and pray loudly, with extremely pious expressions. Boom! There was obviously no sound. But when the two pressures collided in the air less than 2 meters outside the village, at that moment, Cohen felt as if he heard a loud noise. It was not a real sound, but more like a loud noise in the consciousness. He subconsciously covered his ears, but the loud noise was still unstoppable. "Be careful," someone pulled him, and Cohen felt himself move a step to the right, and then at the critical moment, a huge invisible airflow passed by his original position. My shoulder was rubbed a little bit, and I just felt a burning pain. He still couldn't see everything around him, and his eyes seemed to be blurry. Countless colors were mixed together, twisting and rotating, like many colors of paint being poured into a bucket and stirred, and nothing could be seen clearly. There was only a faint sound in the ears. His consciousness was shaken. It's very troublesome for a weak consciousness to face such an impact. The voice was intermittent, as if it was Daryl speaking. Cohen felt like he was under turbid water, his body moved slowly, he couldn't see anything, and could only barely hear something. He felt as if he was being pulled by someone, running through a colorful passage and over a creeping and twisted cave. I don't know how long it took. Bang bang. Suddenly two thunderous sounds sounded in his ears. Cohen came to his senses and all his senses quickly returned to normal. He was shocked to find that he was no longer in the original village. It was dark all around, as if they were in a cave tunnel. He was being pulled by Rustam and was following Daryl. The three of them were standing at an exit of the cave passage. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 617. In front of them was an empty stone hall, dark, but somehow, there was no light, but they could clearly see an old man standing in the center of the stone hall with a cane, staring at them quietly. "Where are we?" "The escape tunnel beneath the village." "Where are those villagers?" "Just ignore them," Cohen asked. "The greatest protection for them is that we leave," Rustam replied in a low voice. "Be careful next time," Rustam said seriously, "I'm not kidding this time. If we're not careful, we may die here." "I've encountered this kind of thing too many times," Cohen said nonchalantly with a carefree smile. At this moment, the old man in the stone hall opposite made a move. He began to stare at the three people with his cloudy black eyes. The first one was Daryl. He stayed there for 5 seconds before slowly looking away. The second one was Rustam, who stayed for 3 seconds. Finally came Cohen, who only stayed for more than a second. "He's marking," whispered Daryl from the front. "Death mark. This means that the three of us are the targets he must kill. This is an ancient ritual. It is said that ancient witch doctors believed that gazing deeply into a person can leave a seed of consciousness in the person. It can create a thread of fate that connects the two. This thread can give the witch doctor the whereabouts of the other party within a certain time range. This is also a ritual that expresses determination to kill." Rustam smiled bitterly, "We are on his must-kill list. Why don't you give the pages to him?" "It doesn't matter what happens to us, right?" Cohen asked in a low voice. The other two people immediately glared at him, and Cohen immediately waved his hands. Okay, okay, don't glare at me, I just said that casually out of ignorance." "Run back," suddenly Daryl shouted. A faint buzzing sound suddenly came from the stone hall. It was like the sound of a swarm of bees. Cohen, who had experienced such a tragedy before, immediately turned pale. Without saying a word, he turned around and ran away. The three of them ran away like crazy along the cave passage. Cohen turned around and took a moment to take a look, and suddenly goosebumps appeared all over his body. In the cave behind him, countless small white insects were swarming and crawling. These maggot-like insects all had a pair of transparent wings, flapping rapidly and sharply, chasing the three of them. He could even see the insects' sharp mouthparts like blood-sucking mosquitoes, like embroidery needles shining with white cold light. Countless white insects were like a torrent, chasing the three of them, flowing forward along the cave passage. At this moment, a fork in the road suddenly appeared ahead. Two intersections, one left and one right, lead to different directions. "Go this way," Cohen turned toward the side passage. Be careful, a hand pulled him back. A huge round stone ball in that passage was slowly but surely loosening. Coax. The stone ball, which was more than 4 meters high, suddenly loosened and rolled, rolling towards the passage between the three of them. The old man's face flashed across the surface of the stone ball, as if it were an illusion. "I'll wipe it." Cohen was so frightened that he broke into a cold sweat. If he had just run there would be stone balls blocking the passage in front of him and countless man-eating bugs behind him. He would probably be dead by now. "You can't run away." The old man's voice seemed to float from a distance, faintly visible. "Go to hell," cried Cohen. Whoosh! Suddenly, a sharp stone flew past him, hitting the stone wall in the curve in front like a bullet, splashing sparks. "Come back," Cohen yelled. The three of them began to dodge left and right, constantly avoiding the powerful rocks shot strangely from the insect swarm behind them. The old man behind him kept waving his cane, and rocks flew out automatically, hitting the three people in front of him. "There's more ahead," Darrell screamed. The other two people raised their eyes and looked over, and sure enough, a huge white stone ball rolled in from the front, with a diameter of more than 5 meters. Gilagilo seemed to be able to crush everything fragile in the cave into debris. Likewise, the surface of the stone ball glows with the illusion of the old man's face. Left, I don't know if it was Darrell or Rustam who was shouting. Cohen couldn't tell who it was anymore. He only had time to instinctively roll to the left, and immediately rolled into a small hollow space. Rumble. The stone ball crashed past the three of them. "Kona." Cohen suddenly seemed to hear someone calling him, and he looked along the sound. I saw a big hole suddenly opened in the passage where the stone ball rolled, and the light shone down, and a figure jumped in. "Cohen, hand over the lucky stone clock." "This man is a handsome white-skinned man with short golden hair. He is capable and strong, with a cold and powerful aura." Cohen and the three others had no time to pay attention to him, because after the insect swarm behind was knocked back by the boulder, the old man's figure caught up from behind again. He seemed to have stepped out of countless insects, and strangely avoided the impact of the boulder. With a wave of his cane, there was suddenly another rumble in front of him. "Move forward. Quick, quick, quick," Darrell shouted loudly. Rustam followed closely behind, and Cohen could only run at the back. "Get away." Another huge stone ball rolled over. Darrell didn't know how he made another depression in the stone wall, and the three of them hid in it decisively. The stone ball thundered towards the blond man who was catching up behind him. The latter had no time to dodge, and no space to dodge, and faced the stone ball head-on. Tragic. Cohen couldn't help but mourn for this guy. This was simply an unreasonable disaster. At this time, boom! In an instant, there was a loud noise, like a bomb exploding. The boulder was smashed into pieces with a loud bang, breaking through it. Among the countless gravel and dust, the blond figure walked out with a stern expression. "Cohen, hand over the lucky stone clock." Garin slowly walked out of the middle. Countless insects were flying around him, but they died strangely layer by layer. They fell on the ground around him and quickly accumulated a thick layer. Cohen was running forward and running away when he suddenly heard a loud noise behind him. When he turned around and saw this scene, he immediately stopped and almost fell to the ground. "Hell, this guy is even stronger." At this moment, the mysterious old man at the back screamed wildly and connected his staff. Huge stone balls rolled loudly, and 5 or 6 of them rushed out, but they were smashed one by Garin. Every punch was like an explosion of dynamite, extremely terrifying. A group of people suddenly lost their voice and gasped when they saw Garin smashing away stone balls like balloons. "I'm going to hum your whole family." "Cohen, where did you get this monster from?" Rustam finally lost his composure. This was an unexpected change, completely out of his control. "I don't know either." "I don't even know him," Cohen yelled. The two of them ran away frantically, following Daryl. The huge stone ball chasing them from behind became their hope of intercepting the pursuers behind them. Cohen, Garen roared, spreading his hands, and in an instant, the huge stone ball was split into two halves. What the hell? Don't chase me, Cohen started running wildly, howling like a ghost. A group of people ran in front, and Garen chased behind. From time to time, huge stone balls blocked his pursuit. The last mysterious old man seemed to be angered by Garen. He roared loudly and kept summoning sharp pieces. Flying rocks hit Garen. These flying rocks also became a hindrance to Garen's pursuit. Garen was furious. He was only distracted for a moment when the entire army encountered a large group of crazy beasts and was almost dispersed. After a burst of indiscriminate bombardment with various heavy weapons, part of the herd was slaughtered, and then the troops were organized and moved forward. Then there was another earthquake-like vibration. Just as we were about to reach the village, the ground suddenly shook violently, and the entire village sank directly into a dark ring underground trench. He was able to avoid it in advance, but the team was not so lucky. More than half of the weapons of the Nighthawks were interfered with by this deep trench. Then that Lieber sneaked out and fired cold shots, and then fled into the underground passage when he chased him. Finally, there was another earthquake, and the newly integrated team was scattered again. The furious Garen directly ordered them to disperse and massacre, killing everyone they encountered. A series of accidents made him furious. He came for revenge, not for an outing. After finally finding the movement underground, I decisively broke through and jumped down. I happened to meet Cohen's group. If the lucky stone clock is offered to your mouth, you will naturally not let it go. So it became the current situation. The three people in front are running, Garen is chasing in the middle, and the old man is last in the back. Garen was extremely annoyed by the old man's interference, but he was afraid of turning around to deal with the old man. The person in front of him had disappeared. He was frightened by today's series of accidents without warning. Anyway, as long as you find Cohen, Lieber will not be far away. You can also get the secret of the lucky stone clock, and everything can be solved and sorted out. Boom. Another stone ball was inserted by him casually and cut into two halves. Oh no. Cohen, didn't you say that you were only being hunted because of ordinary antiques? How could ordinary antiques provoke such inhuman beings? Are you kidding me? Rustam couldn't bear it anymore, he cursed loudly. It's no wonder that these two people can become close friends. They have similar personalities in times of crisis. This was not the same person before, Cohen replied, but he still had the energy to reply. His face was covered in sweat and he looked like he might die at any time. Throw the lucky stone clock to him, Rustam was about to cry without tears. Right away, Cohen agreed repeatedly and quickly took out a small white thing like a porcelain bottle from his body. He quickly threw it back. The vial immediately spun and flew out, and was accurately caught by Garen behind. But he just glanced at the vial and continued to catch up. Oh no! Why is he still here? Rustam was helpless. How the hell do I know? Cohen was about to collapse. His strength was almost exhausted. If he continued running, he doubted whether his heart would beat too fast and die. What's that floating thing? Garen's sharp eyes saw something like a black book floating in front of the three of them. It looked very high-end. Give me that and I'll leave. I'll wipe it. The three people in front of them suddenly felt powerless, their emotions focused on the most important page. Isn't it the same as the beginning after going around a circle? Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 618. What to do now? Rustam's original plan was messed up by Garen, and now he doesn't know how to solve it. Daryl looked back at him and said nothing, but his eyes actually allowed him to clearly identify a lot of complicated meanings. Keep running, don't be impatient, I have one last safety measure. Okay, Rustam nodded. Comparing the two men's abnormal physical strength, Cohen's sprint in less than 10 minutes had only left out air and no incoming air. His eyes rolled white, but his legs were still running, producing jaw-dropping speeds. If you look carefully, you can see a thin black halo flickering slightly around the edges of his legs. But even so, he was speechless at this time and could only breathe quickly like a bellows. The passage was dark, with only a faint gleam of light coming from the pages of the document in front of it. The walls on both sides are getting narrower and narrower, from nearly 5 meters at the beginning to only 1 meter now. The stone balls that appeared in front are getting flatter and flatter. They can no longer be called stone balls, but can only be called stone wheels. The hurried footsteps of the three people continued to echo in the passage. When Rustam saw that Cohen was dying, he turned around and patted him on the shoulder. I can temporarily overdraw your physical strength tomorrow, but then you need to rest for a week before you can recover. Remember? Cohen nodded fiercely, and suddenly felt that his whole body was full of energy. The fatigue just now was swept away, replaced by unparalleled abundant physical strength. It feels so good, he couldn't help but moan. Go right, Darrell yelled. The three of them rolled decisively to the right, crossed a bend that appeared in front of them, and rolled to the left into a dark shadow depression. Boom boom boom. 3 consecutive stone wheels roared and rolled back. It directly filled the entire channel. You can still vaguely hear the old man shouting from far behind. Destiny. The three of them did not dare to stop at all. They climbed out of the shadow depression and continued running forward. The shadow depression instantly returned to an ordinary stone wall after they came out, and they could not see where the previous depression was. It's amazing, Cohen became energetic again after regaining his vitality. The power of the tome page is endless, and Darrell uses its power to temporarily pull us into a zone that no one can set foot in order to avoid the stone wheel, Rustam explained. What's the principle? Bang. A huge explosion sounded behind him, interrupting his question. Quick, 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 Darrell suddenly shouted, 100 meters ahead, jump as hard as you can. Don't worry about anything. Jump forward. With all your strength. The speed of the three people was astonishingly fast, like a black lightning in the tunnel. At this moment, their bodies seemed to be twisted and elongated. The three people connected into a black line, and passed through this tunnel almost instantly. A distance of 100 meters. Whoosh. Ahead is a blocked passage wall, and there is no path at all. After the three of them turned around the twists and turns of the passage, Darrell was the first to jump up and jump towards the wall. Hiss. There was a noise, as if the radio didn't receive any signal. She flew up, and just when she was about to hit the stone wall, she sank into the wall and disappeared as if she had jumped into the water. Rustam also did not hesitate, flew up, and jumped in together, as if the stone wall was just an illusion, and the front was actually not a stone wall, but just a wall of water. Cohen didn't have time to react, and his legs didn't obey his command at all, and flew directly towards the stone wall with him. Ah! He screamed loudly, and then disappeared into the stone wall with a pop. Almost instantly, a flash of gold rushed into the blind corner from behind, stopping the figure instantly. Garin glanced around and found no signs. He lightly scratched the ground with his toes and saw the footprints left by the three people on the ground. He glanced at the dead wall in front of him. He suddenly flashed in front of the wall and punched. Bang! There was a loud earthquake in the underground tunnel, shaking violently. A lot of lime dust flew up and spread everywhere. The strong wind blew by, the dust settled, and a huge spider web crack appeared on the wall. In the middle of the spider web, there is a clear pit that sinks into an unknown depth. Garin pulled out his leather-gloved right arm from the wall and moved his shoulder. His right arm was completely immersed in the wall until his shoulder. Solid, he asked in confusion. Scan your surroundings left and right. His gaze seemed to be filled with ferocity and powerful power in the darkness. A few panicked mice were glanced at, and their bodies suddenly stiffened and stayed motionless in place. Boom. He punched the wall again. Boom boom boom. Punch after punch. Rumbling vibrations and huge explosions constantly shook the entire underground passage. Garen violently smashed his fists against the wall. His hands were like the hardest and most powerful plows, digging out a tall, pitch-black hole in the wall. Suddenly he stopped and looked back. Snap, snap, snap. The clear sound of crutches being placed on the ground came from behind Garen. The figure of the mysterious old man slowly appeared at the corner at the end of the tunnel. He held a brown wooden crutch with a goat skull in his hand and stared at Garen calmly. "Are you immortal?" the old man asked in a very awkward and weird international English. His eyes looked surprised, confused, and tinged with a hint of disbelief. "Hey hey!" Garen laughed ferociously, pulled his arm out of the stone on the wall, turned around, and immediately brought down a large piece of rubble. "Tell me, where did they go?" Garen stared at the old man like a lion staring at its prey. "I don't know." The old man shook his head. "Although I don't know where they went, I know they will come back here." He looked at the galleons from top to bottom again. "Mortal, you have an incredible body and will. Can you tell me how you got all this?" A mysterious, inexplicable power that was completely invisible began to surge within him. "In exchange, I can teach you the source of my power." "Oh," Garen patted the dust on his hands and showed a strange smile. This is his first real contact with the high-end power people in this world. Compared with the previous vampires, the old man in front of him seems to be surrounded by a mysterious force field all the time, which seems to be a circle of flowing surrounding gravity, and like a volcanic lava about to erupt. It can even give people a more mysterious feeling. Garen couldn't tell what it was. "Isn't your power only women can use? You know very well that both witches and us men can actually use the power of our ancestors. The only difference is that women have a much higher success rate. Most of the men's excessive desires cannot be peaceful, and will disturb the operation of the power of our ancestors." The old man explained, "So even if a woman's vision is too strong, she cannot withstand the infusion of the power of her ancestors." "Are you sure they will come back?" Garen asked again. "Of course. This is the jumping point, they can't escape from here." The old man nodded. Garen believed him, because the old man's purpose was obviously the same as his, and he also wanted to chase the page in the hands of the three people in front. Since the other party is standing here without any fuss, then what he said must be correct. "So what is that black page?" Hearing this, the old man paused slightly. "You're chasing him without even knowing what he is." He looked at Garen in disbelief, as if he didn't believe there was such a person in this world. "Aren't you afraid that it is something harmful to you?" "The so-called harmfulness is just a stimulus that is beyond your own strength." Garen shrugged. "As long as you are strong enough, harmfulness can only become a nutrient that stimulates you to become stronger. That requires life. Even the vampires don't dare to grow like this," the old man said in a low voice. "That's my business." Garen smiled slightly. "Now, tell me, what is that floating black page?" The two stopped talking for a while, just facing each other. At the end of this passage, the two people were like stone statues, their minds focused on each other, motionless. "It's been a long time, I don't know how much time has passed." The old man spoke slowly. This time, his speaking was much better than before. "That is the page of the Supreme Book, the ancestral book that is rumored to record knowledge of the mysterious and unknown world. What is the use?" The old man did not answer immediately, but took a deep look at Garen. "Your greed will lead you into the abyss." "The abyss cannot stop me." Garen grinned, and his white teeth were even vaguely visible in the darkness. "You're too arrogant." The old man tightened his grip on the cane. "Which one is stronger, you or the vampires?" Garen suddenly asked a very jumping question. Humph, the old man snorted coldly, a hint of black flashing in his eyes. He raised his crutch high and brought it down hard. It seemed to be very slow, but in just an instant, his crutches touched the ground, like a phantom. Snapped. In the crisp impact sound, Garen's figure moved in response. Like a darting black snake, the unstringed arrow pounces on the opponent like lightning. His hands were clenched into claws, making a sharp whistling sound in the air, and several streams of white air suddenly cut through the air. In the darkness, his eyes suddenly flashed a red light, as if something was emitting light from inside the eyeballs. The red color was extremely terrifying. Bang! With a dull impact, his claws hit the old man less than 1 meter in front of him, and then paused for an instant. The power of entanglement, the old man shouted loudly. There was no light or shadow, and no movement could be seen. In the darkness, the only sound that could be heard was the sound of the crutch hitting the ground, echoing in the tunnel. Everything seemed to be just an illusion, there was no light, no abnormality. The old man took a few steps back and looked at Garen with a calm expression. He didn't make any unnecessary movements, just stared quietly. But such a gaze seems to have an invisible force at work. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 619. This invisible force enveloped Garen in an instant. This power is extremely weird. It will change with Garen's strength. The greater the power he uses, the stronger this power will be. It was like a thick mass of glue that stuck to Garen's body. Garen was surprised that his speed at such a straight distance and in such a spacious space could actually make the other party shout. Normally, he would crush the other person's neck when the other person's voice can't come out. But at this time, something seemed to distance him from the old man. This reminded him of some people with special abilities in the totem world. Such ability users are often in trouble. If there is no great destructive power to disrupt the order of the influence fields that activate their abilities, then you can only play games with them in the circle of their designated ability rules. Only by using powerful force to create an unstable and chaotic environment can the environment in which they activate their abilities be destroyed, thus destroying the effects of their abilities. Back then, he directly crushed it with the huge power of totem light. No matter what your abilities are, you need a stable environment to occur. If the stability of this environment is destroyed, then your abilities will naturally be ruined. But his current normal strength is not enough to reach that level. Garen's eyes narrowed slightly, and the palm of his right arm began to clench slightly. If necessary, he might directly choose to release the life force accumulation of a killing hand. He has never truly released the power of liberation in a moment, but his maximum power can be inferred from a small amount of tests before. It was a terrifying explosion that was close to the heyday of his totem world. Although only for a moment. It's just that such a liberation is likely to cause strong trauma to his own body, which requires spending potential points to repair it. As long as half of it is liberated, it should be fine. But you can test it with normal power first. Without hesitation, Garen suddenly exploded with power in his right hand, and his overall physical fitness exploded at more than 2 points. Paired with the burst of Killing Hand's normal secret martial arts skills. He was like a swordfish flying out of the water. He rolled gently and landed steadily in the air a few meters away from the old man. But that force still haunted him. All actions, from attacking to retreating, only took 2 seconds. At this moment, the old man opposite raised the cane again and struck it down for the second time. Garen felt that his speed was much slower. A red light flashed in his eyes, and the secret martial arts of the Killing Hand was operating to the extreme in an instant. Although there was no burst of vitality, this kind of power could be regarded as the peak of his life in the secret martial arts world. The right hand momentarily touched a muscle somewhere on the left shoulder. Laugh. The muscles there instantly sunk, and a stream of air shot out from the depression, making a whistling sound as it rubbed against the air. A look of pain flashed across Garen's face. It was pure pain. It is the natural effect produced after this acupointment is tapped. Combining the characteristics of the killing hand, he later developed many special secret techniques, among which this acupointment was one of them. This acupuncture point was learned from an ancient secret martial arts book, and when the characteristics of the killing hand are stimulated with a special technique, it will produce an incredible power. It seems that in an instant, the entire body of the person will be maximized, and the life potential can be stimulated to the maximum. Although it is not as good as the life force explosion of the killing hand, it can also exert one life potential into two powers. Because this acupointment maximizes the potential of activating life, it is called the secret point of life by Galen. He searched and explored in the secret martial arts memory and finally found 9 such secret points, leaving 2 as hidden positions that no one but him could use. The remaining 7 acupuncture points were integrated by him to form an overall set of secret techniques. The power of this set of secret techniques is extremely terrifying, and it can instantly enhance the state designated by the practitioner after being activated. For example, if you click on one acupuncture point, your strength and speed can be doubled. If you click on 2 acupuncture points, your strength and speed can be doubled. If you click on 3 acupoints, your strength and speed can be doubled. The precious thing about this set of secret skills is that they can be stacked. It can be superimposed on other secret skills. This is the scariest place. If someone is physically strong enough, after activating the secret skill of projection or the secret skill of biphasic water bird fist, and then activating the secret point of life, the power brought about will be terrifying to an extremely terrifying level. Perhaps to commemorate his past life on Earth, and because there were exactly 7 acupuncture points left, Garen named this set of secret techniques the 7-star divination secret acupoints. The 7-star secret point is directly named after the 7 stars of the Big Dipper in ancient China. First star, Garen's deep voice sounded. Drink. He growled, and the skin all over his body turned faintly black. His muscles expanded rapidly, and his height also began to increase. His original height of 1.89 meters suddenly expanded to more than 2 meters. Different from the period when the giant elephant was the king of the century, his figure at this time was not as huge and burly as that time, but it gave people a more solid feeling, and his whole skin seemed to be glowing with a black metallic luster. Just as he clicked on the first star, the entangled power just now was directly offset. It didn't disappear, but it still existed, but its power influence was completely harmless to Garen. He raised his legs and was about to rush towards the old man. The power of dullness, there was another sound of crutches. The old man shouted loudly, and the invisible force twisting and surrounding him once again flew out and disappeared into the air between the two people. Garen suddenly felt an invisible force pulling on his hands and feet. He couldn't feel the source of the force, as if it was just the resistance brought by the air, which made him frown slightly. Having just escaped from the entangled state, I felt my body sinking again. But perhaps because his physical condition has doubled now, he doesn't feel much hindrance at all. To put it bluntly, the 7-star secret point is a secret technique he created to utilize the vitality hidden in the hands of killing. For him, the life potential can be continuously accumulated with the hands of killing. Because he was worried that the vitality of the killing hand could be accumulated and then exploded, it would be more powerful, but it could only be exploded all at once and could not be used slowly and sparingly. Therefore, after thinking through a series of tests, Garen found out the 7-star life-pointing secret point. This is a way to use your vitality with maximum efficiency. It can convert vitality into maximum strength extremely efficiently. But to other ordinary people, such a secret skill is a life reminder and cannot be used casually. Because its use consumes vitality and vitality every time. For ordinary people, vitality is lifespan. But the secret technique that can be stacked like this is also destined to have extremely terrifying power. Garen smiled brazenly, and in this state, his body suddenly shook. Tiangang Bailey. His whole body swelled up again, and he pressed his fingers on his chest, and a clear wave of air suddenly spread around his body. The improved Tiangang Bailey was used in his hands. This once ordinary secret method was inconspicuous, but now it exploded with unparalleled terrifying power. One punch. Garen swung out his right fist, and the airflow brought out in an instant caused a vacuum of airflow to suddenly appear in the air in the tunnel. It was too fast, too strong, and the traces of the fist made it impossible for the air to rush in. The horror was caused by vacuum. Vacuum slash. Garen's right fist seemed to pull up the entire underground air. His short golden hair was blown back by the strong wind and stood up high, shaking and flipping like a lion's mane. The fist came to the old man's eyes in an instant. In an instant, the 5 fingers of the fist spread out and stretched, turning into a palm knife and cutting it vertically. Like the sharpest blade. The sound of whistling fist shadows piercing the air instantly turned into the sound of sharp blades cutting through the air. The power of acceleration, the old man didn't panic at all. Instead, he shouted loudly just before Garen took action. At the same time, his body turned slightly to the left. When the knife reached in front of him, an invisible force instantly shrouded in Galleon's sword. In an instant, an extremely strange phenomenon occurred. The arm that Garen swung out suddenly seemed to be much longer, and the cutting speed of the arm suddenly increased sharply, but the speed of Garen's body was still at the same level as before, which was sluggish due to the entanglement. At this moment, the arm and body suddenly produced a huge tearing force due to the difference in speed. Before the knife actually touched the old man, Garen felt as if his right arm was about to be torn away from his body. This was the first time he encountered this strange phenomenon. The power of the sword burst out of his hand, with the blessing of a certain force, instantly exceeded his control and greatly increased. The inertial momentum caused by this directly caused a speed difference between his arm and body. If it were an ordinary person, this moment would cause the muscle is instantly strained, or even more seriously, the arm may be directly torn and broken, losing an arm. But Garen just snorted coldly. The feet suddenly exploded, adding a new force, increasing the speed of the body at the same time, while gently reducing the force on the arms. He has always controlled his power at will, and his level beyond the king of the century allows him to fully control any subtle change in himself. Don't be shaken by anything external. The hand knife was back under his control in an instant. This time the two of them fought. It was just a flash of light, not even a breath, maybe not even a blink. But such frequency of fights and reaction speed made both of them fearful of their opponents. I know that the other party is a powerful opponent on the same level as myself. The hand knife failed in the end and cut hard into the wall, leaving an unknown deep black mark directly on the stone wall. The old man's figure did not know when it moved to a place 2 meters away from its original position. Mortal, he gently stroked the goat skull on his cane. I have never seen a mortal as powerful as you. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 620. Garen pulled out his arm from the wall. What do you want to say? He was completely unaware of the source and nature of the opponent's power, and it seemed to appear out of thin air. This made him slightly wary. This so-called ancestral power seemed to be extremely mysterious. He was considering whether to study it carefully and explore it carefully before dealing with it. How about we join forces? The old man suddenly said something that shocked Garen. Laugh. On the right side of his old face, a blood hole suddenly opened, and black blood splashed out from the wound. It did not flow out slowly, but splashed, as if spraying, and a stream of blood fell on the ground. Then something strange happened. The blood on the ground squirmed like a living thing. It turned into a black line like an insect and quickly crawled back to the old man's feet, along his legs, and soon crawled back to the wound on his face. Drill in again, and the wound will heal automatically. Although Garen was not injured at all, and the cost of the secret technique used was not important to him, in comparison, the opponent's method was unknown. This may also be an opportunity to understand the witchcraft of this world. It's not like he never thought about finding out about Raphael, but in fact Raphael was too close to his family. This world rarely gave him a sense of peace, and he didn't want to destroy it casually. In addition, I did not attach much importance to the so-called witchcraft in the past, but now it seems that it has some effects unexpectedly, and it should arouse some vigilance. Join forces. Since we join forces, there must be enemies, right? Garen's figure quickly shrank and returned to its original size. The clothes on his body were only a little messy, and he looked like a young man who was casually out for an outing. Vampire. A trace of black flashed in the old man's eyes. 200 years ago, they besieged and killed me. My descendants buried my divided body in the mausoleum they built, absorbing the power of the universe and resurrecting it. It was not until a few decades ago that I was inadvertently awakened by adventurers. Resurrection. Garen's eyes flickered. You said you can be resurrected? What is the price of such a resurrection? The vampires have little to do with me, otherwise I wouldn't have to join forces with you for a trivial matter. Unfortunately, the resurrection technique can only be used on powerful people who are favored by the ancestors. You are not on the same path as us and cannot be used. The old man shook his head. As for the vampires have little to do with you. He suddenly laughed, and the dry and somewhat sarcastic laughter seemed extremely weird in the tunnel and cave. Why are you laughing? Garen's expression darkened. You have hallucination traces of the vampire mark on your body. You don't know. Although the old man's laughter stopped, he still smiled. A high-level vampire has stained your body with this hallucination mark. Depending on your level, you might even be at the Death Apostle level, the old man said with a smile. To put it simply, you should have been targeted by a certain extremely powerful vampire. They hunt everywhere for the best blood bank with strong physiques and perfect wills. Unfortunately, you have been selected by a certain Death Apostle. Garen's face turned cold. He recalled the strange dream he had had a few days ago. He had never had such a dream. His powerful will and soul were enough to completely control all the reactions of his body. But that dream was beyond his imagination and expectation. They have regarded you as the best blood food. Vampires can also obtain magical and mysterious powers through mysterious blood. Even we have no way of knowing what their power is. The abilities of every high-level vampire, even the dead apostles, they are mysterious and powerful, the old man said simply, but unlike other wizards, I know a little bit about them. For example, they usually use dreams to seduce and intimidate, or even control their prey. Garen's pupils shrank slightly. Dream. A series of explosions sounded involuntarily all over his body. His muscles and joints seemed to have countless small bombs inside. The dull and terrifying explosions continued to sound, connecting together. I am now so weak that my strength is not even half of what I was at my peak. I can see that there is a huge power of life hidden in you. That power is in your hands. Those hands seem to have some kind of evil power. Maybe this is the real reason why the vampire hasn't attacked you yet. Maybe he is also afraid, the old man explained. Garen closed his eyes for a moment. Only then did he open his eyes again. It seems that I do need to learn more about the world of vampires. The old man opposite suddenly showed a happy smile. You made a wise decision. Boom. There was a sudden explosion. Behind the two of them, an invisible distortion exploded behind Garen, as if a huge vortex was created in the air, with several black spots suddenly appearing in it. The black spots are getting bigger and bigger. Puff. A black mass was squeezed out by the vortex and fell to the ground. This black thing is clearly three people hugging each other. Daryl, Rustam, and Cohen. The three of them were twisted into a ball, with confused eyes and foaming at the mouth. But the strange thing is that a faint black halo appears on them. Where are the pages? The old man took a step forward and asked in a deep voice, "Tell me, where are the pages?" The three of them looked confused, as if they didn't understand what he meant. The black light blooming from their bodies blocked the old man from getting any closer. Garin crossed his arms and walked to the back to watch indifferently. When he found out that he actually had the mark of a vampire on his body, his main concern now was not what page in the book, but how to find the vampire who marked him. He was completely unfamiliar with this power system and didn't even know how the other party marked him. This is the key. Laugh. Suddenly there was an electric blast. The mysterious old man withdrew his right hand, and a trace of black smoke was rising from the tips of his skinny fingers. The finger had just been withdrawn from the air 2 meters away from the three of them. What's going on now? Garin frowned. He couldn't understand this guy's movements at all. They left. The old man also frowned. They used the essence of their power to get out of here. Garin was confused and looked at the three people huddled together on the ground. Aren't they still here? He saw the empty confusion in the eyes of the three people, and seemed to realize something. You mean their consciousness left their body? Yes, the old man nodded. They are relying on this method to avoid my search. What's the use of this? Their bodies are under our care and they will come back sooner or later, Garin asked calmly. That's not the case, the old man shook his head. They can completely pull their bodies over in an instant from a very far distance. As long as they are willing, it is not difficult to even rebuild a body. What on earth is this? Garin didn't understand the power of these witch doctors and wizards at all. The old man glanced at him. On our road, you are not even an apprentice. It's normal not to understand. He turned back and continued to stare at the three bodies on the ground. If you like, I can serve as a companion. You pass on my knowledge, if you want to understand. Are you willing to impart knowledge to me? Garin has never thought that such a powerful and mysterious thing should be kept strictly in the heart. It is impossible to pass on the teaching without many tests. Why is this guy imparting knowledge on causes so casually? It doesn't matter, the old man smiled, because our knowledge has always been full of dangers and is an endless exploration of the universe. Even if you know how to do it, you still have to cooperate wholeheartedly, believe, and trust, so just knowing how you do it doesn't make much sense. Truly controlling your own heart is the biggest fundamental. What you said caused me a lot of doubts, Garin whispered. Well, I hope to learn knowledge from you after this. Maybe this ancient knowledge will have a good effect on me. The old man smiled kindly at him and said, My name is AG, you can just call me AG. We will still have a long time in the future, so let's deal with these guys who steal the pages first. The two stopped causing disputes. Garin took out the walkie-talkie, looked at the signal, and ignored the old man's actions, but began to contact the rest of his men. Angie, where's the bald head? The boss is stuck in a deep ditch nearby and is trying to drag the car out. A female voice came out immediately from the intercom. Are you and Kuchu together? Yes. Take your people and come to my location. Be careful that the underground soil may collapse. Remember to bring heavy firearms and surveillance equipment. Clear. Turn off the walkie-talkie. This woman Angie and Keikyo are both the top elites in the Nighthawk group, and they are also masters of the secret technique of projection. With their strength, combined with monitoring equipment, they can accurately monitor this area with a radius of more than a kilometer. At this time, the mysterious old man AG walked up to the three of them and sat down cross-legged. He put the crutches on his knees, clasped his hands together, and his whole body began to slowly tremble like an epileptic. Garin didn't know what he was going to do, but he could feel that an invisible wave was emanating from his body, and it was constantly gathering towards the three of them. I'm leaving too to track them. I hope you can help me guard the body here. The old man Ag turned back and said to Garen. No problem. Garen nodded. As soon as he finished speaking, the old man's eyes suddenly lost their sparkle and dimmed instantly, like gems that had fallen away. Garen frowned and walked around the four people. He didn't find any strange phenomena around them, and everything returned to calm and tranquility. Time passed by, and Garen waited quietly. His body exuded a strong aura. Although it was not real aura, it also attracted the old tree bugs around him to not dare to approach. I don't know how long it took. Ah! A sharp cry suddenly sounded. Cohen and the other three jumped up suddenly and wanted to run towards the stone wall. Garen reacted and stepped on it with the sole of his foot. Bang! He shot out and held down Daryl's neck, slamming him against the wall. Coax! There was a huge earthquake, and Daryl foamed at the mouth and fainted. The other two people, Rustam and Cohen, were so frightened that they trembled all over. They stayed in place and watched Garen without daring to make any more unnecessary movements. Their faces were pale, not the kind of frightened paleness, but white as if there was not much blood at all. It seemed as if he had experienced something extremely terrifying just a moment ago. At this moment, the old man Ag slowly woke up. He picked up the crutches, coughed heavily, and got up from the ground. Hand over the pages, they are mine, he said in a low voice. His eyes stared at the two of them, like shining pearls in the night. When the two of them saw Garen and the old man standing together without any sign of fighting, their expressions suddenly turned uglier. What do you want? We have hidden the pages in a place where no one can find them. Rustam said loudly. You stole it from my underground palace and passed it down for so many years as your so-called ancestral possession. This is shameful theft, Ag said fiercely. Fate led me to you. Come on, hand it over, and I can consider whether to let you go. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 621. Garen beside him was a little impatient. Cohen, what is the secret of the lucky stone clock? And, where is Lieber? Tell me. Cohen shook his head. I don't know. Lieber should have been following me, but now I'm not sure if he has escaped. Everything here has exceeded his imagination. The secret of the lucky stone clock? In fact, there is no so-called treasure at all. He smiled bitterly. That was all made up to deceive you. My so-called treasure was because I was afraid that the lucky stone clock would not be able to attract your attention, so I simply made up a lie to let everyone follow and muddy the waters. On the other side, Rustam was pressed against the chest by the old man with the cane. The two of them were whispering something quickly. I couldn't understand the language they spoke. It seemed to be a very ancient language. When the two of them were dealing with the inquiries from Galen and the old man respectively, Galen took out the lucky stone clock that looked like a small white porcelain bottle from his arms while listening to Cohen's explanation. The small bottle is just like an ordinary oriental white jade porcelain bottle. It has a thin neck and is only about the size of a palm. When shaken gently, a faint tinkling sound can be heard from inside. Is this the lucky stone clock? Garen frowned. He could feel that the surface of this small bottle was covered with a thin layer of cool breath, which was the breath of the potential point. He tried to absorb it, but this layer of breath actually adhered to the surface of the bottle and did not break away at all. Of course, it is said that there is a mysterious story hidden in it. But in my opinion, this is just an ordinary antique. Cohen said helplessly, listen to me, your Nighthawk thing is none of our business, it's all Lieber's. That guy is crazy and entangled everyone to besiege Nighthawk. Of course I know, otherwise you would have died long ago. Garen interrupted him. Next, I need you to lure me out to Lieber. That guy killed a lot of my patrols along the way. A fierce light flashed in his eyes. Cohen couldn't help but shudder. What do you want me to do? It's very simple, just use it as bait. Garen grinned, and his right hand suddenly popped out, hitting 7 or 8 locations on his body. Bang 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 bang. A series of crisp sounds suddenly erupted, and Cohen screamed like a pig. At least a dozen bones on his body were broken and fractured by Garin in an instant. His whole body fell limply to the ground, and fine cold sweat oozed from everywhere on his forehead and neck. "No, don't do this. I have a better way to lure him out," he wailed loudly. "But I think this is the best way, isn't it?" Garin smiled gently. But this smile looked extremely terrifying in Cohen's eyes. He suddenly raised his leg and kicked him hard. Bang! Cohen's whole waist was kicked up by him, and he rolled and flew out, hitting the wall of the side tunnel, where there happened to be a sharp protrusion that hit his thigh. Oh! He actually still had the strength to shout. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" Garin walked over and picked him up. "This is simulating a serious injury. When I throw you to an open place, a more conspicuous place, facing this kind of enemy that can be eliminated with just one shot from a distance, I don't think even Lieber will tolerate it. You have to hold back and don't take action." He lifted Cohen's painful head. "As long as we take action, he will be dead." Nighthawk was the first pilot he established and the basis for his start. He needed to establish a certain degree of deterrence to let outside forces understand that his power was irresistible. Hiss! Suddenly there was a sound from the intercom. Garin took it off and looked at it, and a female voice came from inside. "Captain, the bald boss has found 5 lucky stone bells and has obtained them. However, he has lost some men. Will he come over to you immediately?" Oh, Garin's eyes lit up. 5 more lucky stone clocks. Yes, apart from the destroyed one, there should be 6 more lucky stone clocks, Cohen reluctantly replied quickly. "Let him bring me here and locate my position by himself." Yes, the sound of a car engine starting suddenly came from the intercom. Galen dragged Cohen all the way back to the original dead-end passage. They made a fuss and left the original dead-end passage. At this time, in front of the dead wall of the passage, in front of the big hole dug by Galen with his bare hands, AG was having a calm conversation with Rustam. What was strange was that Rustam had a sad look on his face, but AG's tears were slowly flowing down, and his body was trembling slightly, as if remembering something extremely sad. "I didn't expect it. I didn't expect it." AG's expression was painful and contradictory. He looked at Rustam with a strange look in his eyes, which contained both love and sadness, as well as pain and tangle. "Still loving? What kind of development is this?" Galen frowned and muttered a few words, then carried Cohen to the side and waited quietly. "I know a little bit," Cohen said slowly and quietly from the side. Garin glanced at him and put his hand on his neck, immediately blocking all of Cohen's pain. "Tell me." This guy couldn't feel the pain for an instant, and his expression suddenly changed. He tried to move his hands and feet as if he couldn't believe it, but his body didn't seem to belong to him and he couldn't move at all. Seeing this, he had no choice but to give up. Rustam is actually a descendant of AG. Garin didn't react to this rhythm at all. Just now, those people were chasing me to escape the massacre, and now they have become a family. Rustam and his other brothers and sisters thought that the pages of the Supreme Book had contaminated AG, so they stole the pages and sealed the knowledge in them, only to use them as a simple tool. But AG did not understand that the pages of the book are his greatest source of strength. He once narrowly escaped death to get them, and they are his greatest wealth. Cohen said it with great force. "I don't care who your relatives are, I saw murderous intent in AG's eyes," Garin suddenly interjected. "No way." Cohen opened his eyes wide. Garin was silent for a moment and felt the total potential points of the lucky stone clock in his arms. One bottle had about 5 points, which was more than expected. After calculation, there were 5 more bottles. If the other bottles were equal to this one, if it was the same, then the total would be 25 points, which was much more than he expected. He thought for a moment and shouted directly to the AG over there. AG, how can I contact you in the future? AG turned around, glanced at the koan in Galen's hand, and showed a strange expression. Of course it's a phone number. My phone number is 8224-6579330. He didn't say the last four words aloud, but the sound was directly transmitted to Garen's ears. Garen remembered it instantly and nodded to AG. Although it seems strange that an old wizard from a primitive tribe can actually use a satellite phone, for such a person, everything is possible. Garen felt that the witch doctors and wizards he met this time were inexplicable. Their relationship was a mess, like a messy ball of yarn. Mentioning koan, Garen stopped thinking about the document page. The most important thing for him now was to understand the principles of the power system from AG. It was not suitable to fall out with him over something that might not necessarily have an effect on him. In addition, with the lucky stone clock and koan as bait, Garen planned to directly deal with Lieber hiding in the dark. This guy didn't meet him at all along the way, he was just a patrol member of the hunting team from afar. Even if the elites go out alone, they can't find him at all. His hiding ability is far beyond ordinary people's imagination. Holding the walkie-talkie while locating his position, Galen quickly led koan to an underground tunnel that turned left. The surroundings were dark. He placed the walkie-talkie on the ground, raised his fist and punched it upward. Bang! Large chunks of broken soil and rocks were sprayed out, and a bright light suddenly appeared above. A large hole more than 1 meter wide suddenly appeared in front of the two people. Several large stones rolled down and were smashed open by Garen. The stones immediately embedded themselves into the surrounding cave walls like cannonballs. Seeing koan swallowing saliva wildly, he was afraid that Galen would not pay attention and the flying stone would hit his head. That is a terrifying power that kills instantly. Without saying much, Garen jumped up with koan in mind, and flew out of the passage lightly, landing on the ground on the right side of the entrance to the cave outside. Surrounded by a vast expanse of grassland, the withered green grass rustled in the wind, and several brown gorals were so frightened that they raised their buttocks and ran wildly into the distance. The sky was blue, and the sun was hot and red. On the distant horizon, the huge sun looks like a huge orange balloon. On the green and yellow grassland, Galen carried koan and walked quickly in one direction from a distance. Soon, the sound of car engines was faintly heard from the front, and a large convoy of camouflage vehicles came towards them. Galen threw koan on the ground and went straight to meet him. Captain, the bald man, whose entire upper body looked like a mummy wrapped in bandages, jumped out of the front car, holding a black package in his hand. I have lived up to your expectations. The bald man let out a deep breath and stood in front of Garen, his body straight. The white bandage on his body had blood seeping from it in places, but he still didn't care. Garen took the package in his hand and looked inside. Sure enough, there were 5 identical white porcelain bottles. Patting the bald man on the shoulder, he nodded, a smile finally appearing on his face. Good. Captain, Jay found traces of Lieber, and he led the team to catch up. I'm afraid they are fighting now. The black-haired ponytail woman on the side walked over and whispered. Let's go together. When Garen thought of Levi, his eyes suddenly darkened. It seems that we have finally caught this little mouse. He looked back at koan. Bring that person with you. He is the object of Lieber's greatest hatred. Maybe it can save me a little effort. Yes. The 2 soldiers stepped forward and immediately picked up the weak koan. Be careful, I broke some of this man's bones. If you're not careful, you may be seriously injured and die from internal bleeding, Garen ordered with a smile. After weighing the 5 vials, his mood suddenly improved a lot. The next step is to absorb these 6 lucky stone bells. Unexpectedly, they are quite powerful. Although he didn't know how the bald man got these 5 bottles, it could be seen from his injuries that he paid a lot of effort. After quickly solving things here, he decided to truly enter the world of power. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 622. On the Yellow and Green Grassland. Da-da-da. Heavy machine gun sounds continued, one after another, stopping here and continuing again there. The grass was torn by the storm of bullets, and in some places it had even caught fire, sending out black smoke. Surprise in groups and entangle the opponent as much as possible. A deep, powerful voice sounded from behind the gun-wielding personnel soldier. Yes. The gunfire stopped, and groups of soldiers divided into groups of 5 and groped in all directions. The man conducting the command had short white hair and wore a slim-fitting black leather trench coat. He had a stern face and his eyes were hidden under slightly dark triangular sunglasses. He has a strong body and a cold and calm aura, as if he is standing in place as a cold stone pillar, indestructible and unshakable. Apart from bald head, he is Garen's most capable assistant, Jay Bencourt. This young man who looks mature is actually less than 20 years old, and his true age may even be younger than Galen. He has been a boy soldier since he was a child. His hair turned gray due to malnutrition in his early years. Now that he is old, he can no longer recuperate. Later, after being taught the secret technique of projection by Garen, he developed a crazy admiration for Garen. After a series of tests, he truly became Garen's right-hand man and joined Nighthawk. He has no bullets or food, and he doesn't dare to light a fire, otherwise the smoke will expose his traces, a bespectacled female officer next to Jay whispered. I exchanged shots with him just now, but unfortunately I have a body armor on me, but he doesn't. With the smell of blood, he can't run far, Jay nodded. As he spoke, he opened the inside of the windbreaker, deftly took out the scattered parts one by one, and then quickly assembled the parts, quickly forming a white pistol with a scope in his hand. Jay moved his pistol and his hand shook. Boom! An empty patch of grass on the right was suddenly hit by a shot. Suddenly a cocky figure rolled up there and ran away. Jay didn't have time to say anything, and he also chased after him. Running and shooting with a gun in hand. Bang bang bang. Each bullet hit the man's feet accurately, but each time it only missed the target by a small margin. Just before he was about to focus on aiming at the opponent, the guy jumped away in an irregular direction that violated the dynamics. Reactionary force evasion, a sneer appeared on Jay's lips. He suddenly pulled out a white pistol from his waist. The number of bullets doubled instantly. Bang! A ball of flame exploded in front of the man. It was a grenade. Some soldiers planned the general direction in advance and threw a grenade directly. The two of them were shocked by the huge earthquake at the same time, and rolled to the left almost at the same time. Machine gun bullets exploded underneath the man, splashing a large amount of yellow mud. The place where Jay was originally standing exploded, and there was actually a booby trap mine. The gunfire paused, and smoke from weeds and dirt temporarily obscured the view here. The soldiers in the distance stopped shooting for fear of accidentally injuring Jay. They had tried such crazy ammunition-consuming strafing countless times before, but it had no effect. The two of them were crouched in the smoke and grass, and no one could see the other. Jay covered his left arm, which was scorched black and slightly scratched by the force of the explosion. He held the gun in one hand, sweat dripping from his forehead. Gently, he picked up a small stone with his foot and gave it a strong push. The small stone suddenly flew up and landed in the weeds more than 1 meter away. Snapped. The sound was so weak that it was impossible to hear it amid the wind. Boom! Jay rolled away suddenly to the right, and a ball of Lois exploded from his original position, which was the splash of the bullet hitting the ground. You can instantly deduce my approximate position just by relying on the sound and direction of the stone falling. There was a hint of fighting spirit in his eyes. I haven't encountered such a tough opponent for a long time. The pistol flicked and clicked 3 times. Bang bang bang. There was no movement in the grass where he had just shot, and in the other 2 places he guessed, there was no movement. Obviously, he did not catch the opponent's tail. Jay decisively moved his position after shooting. A red cross appeared faintly in his right eye. It seemed to be a raised cross blood vessel, and it seemed to be some kind of vague mark. The cross mark is exactly in the center of the pupil of the eye. This is the secret skill of projection. With the projection activated, he has much higher perception, agility, and reaction than usual. Not even the slightest movement around him could escape his control. But he has a feeling that the other party is not much worse than him. Even if he activates the secret skill, he still can't grasp the exact whereabouts of the other party. He suddenly turned over and stood up, firing the pistol in his hand instantly. Bang 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 bang. The gunshots were fired continuously, with a faint groan mixed in among them. Hit, a smile appeared on Jay's lips. His legs quickly retreated, and the red crosses in his eyes disappeared immediately. The large team behind them has already set up their formation. All mobile mortars have been set up. In an instant, streams of white smoke spewed out from the muzzle, and dull sounds of hitting the ground continued to sound. Almost at the same time, bright fire suddenly exploded on the grassy hills not far away, and waves of mud flew high. When you find the target, sniper it directly. Jay leaned over to hide and gave the order directly through the communication headset on the eagle eye of his sunglasses. Clear. Attention, I shot him, activate the tracking chip in the bullet immediately, so he can't run away, Jay ordered. The signal is already being checked, don't worry. Jay, how's the situation? The voice in the earphones suddenly changed to Garen's deep and calm voice. Lieber has been shot with a tracking bullet by me. He can't run away, Jay answered in a low voice with the corners of his mouth curled up. Don't worry, our people are already checking the signal. Combined with satellite scanning and monitoring, he... Be careful, a soldier slammed him away. There was a sharp whistling sound, boom. In the red firelight, the soldier and Jay were blown away by the explosion at the same time. It's a helicopter. An armed helicopter. Be careful, a loud shout came from the earphones. Jay's head was dizzy and he got up from the ground. I happened to see 3 black helicopters appearing in the sky not far ahead. I don't know when they appeared there. Each of them was 3 times the size of an ordinary helicopter, and they were covered with rocket launchers, like a hornet's nest. There are also 2 aviation machine guns mounted on both sides of the fuselage. Through the glass, you can see the people inside the helicopter controlling the machine gun and aiming it here. Those people were all wearing white uniforms and should be members of the unified organization. Hidden. Hidden, a voice shouted. Where are the fire thorns? Get rid of them, Jay shouted while pulling Hawkeye. Whizzing. 2 rocket launchers trailed smoke towards the 2 helicopters. One of them was hit by a bullet and exploded in mid-air, while the other accurately hit a helicopter. Bang! A burst of red flames suddenly exploded, and the center of the helicopter was directly blown into a ball of fire. The entire fuselage tilted directly and fell to the ground, and exploded with a roar. I'll do it. Jay quickly ran back to the team's position, took the anti-equipment heavy sniper handed over by a soldier, threw it down and set it up, and the red cross lit up again in his eyes. Data on various factors such as the slight movement of the barrel, wind, deflection, distance, obstacles, etc. all flowed through Jay's mind. The aiming position is instantly determined. Boom! There was a muffled sound from the barrel of the gun. A helicopter exploded in the distance. It exploded into a ball of fire in the air, spinning and falling to the ground. Its fuel tank was shot through and exploded. There is one last one. But it was too late at this time. The last helicopter seemed to be frightened. Rockets flew out of all the launch ports. 6 rockets roared and shot in all directions. The machine guns also began to fire wildly around them. The beating made the soldiers around him unable to lift their heads for a moment. Some people were directly hit by the extremely powerful sweep, and their bodies were broken into 2 sections. If this kind of war weapon does not have anti-equipment and high-power firearms, ordinary firearms will be ineffective against it and can only be beaten passively. Hidden. Hidden. At this moment, a rocket launcher suddenly flew from the grass on the other side and drew a straight line, hitting the helicopter in the middle. Boom. The last helicopter also exploded into a fireball and crashed to the ground. Garin put down his shoulder-mounted rocket launcher from a distance. He stood on a camouflage off-road vehicle that was approaching at high speed. Behind him was a mighty convoy with a large number of heavily armed soldiers and mercenaries sitting on it. The bald man stood on Garen's right hand, and the pony-tailed woman stood on his left hand, forming a defensive posture. The people and horses on both sides quickly merged, and at this time, the grassland was already ignited with thick smoke and fire. Lieber's shadow has long since disappeared. Boss, he was hit by a tracking bullet from me. He can't run far. Jay came up and saluted Garin respectfully. Everyone, carpet search, Galen waved his hand, and all the convoys behind him stopped, and began to jump out of groups of people holding firearms and searching in all directions under the arrangement of the elites. Issue a search order for everyone every 10 minutes. Garin looked at the black-haired ponytail woman, who nodded. Look at the 3 helicopters that crashed to the ground in the distance. They are all Russian heavy-duty helicopters. How many did you encounter just now, bald head? 5, and more than a dozen elite special forces, very difficult to deal with. Among them are experts in mine planning and counter-surveillance. Bald head replied in a low voice. Thank you for your hard work. Garin nodded. Do you know what force they belong to? They are from White Phoenix. The original color group is very dissatisfied with our last mediation move. They think it violated the rules they set. Now they have listed us as Nighthawks as hunting targets. These troops should be sent by them. Here Baldhead introduced briefly. As his former old club, he was still familiar with the original color Baywang. People from Baywang, Garin narrowed his eyes. That's a huge thing. As one of the primary color war organizations, White Phoenix has an extremely formal mercenary organization, and even has high-end mysterious power as its backing, with an unfathomable background. I can teach them a small lesson, but it's enough to target White Phoenix alone. It's not suitable to completely fall out with them for the time being. Garin was worried about the high-end power of the vampire clan. After seeing part of the wizard's high-end power, he felt a certain sense of crisis about this mysterious and strange power system. This system was completely different from what he had learned before. It was even difficult for him to wipe his skin and take precautions. Mysterious Journey. Author, Gunkai. Chapter 623. It is not appropriate to start a war rashly before fully understanding their system. They can't compete with the original color group's great cause. Not to mention the tens of thousands of elite top-level mercenary killers among them, the huge military power and technological power are difficult for ordinary people to compete with, not to mention that there may be more in the future. Has top-notch extraordinary power. Garin didn't believe that such a large group would not have a profound background behind it. If not, it would have been swallowed up long ago. What should we do? Jay was not afraid of the terrorist power of the original color group at all. He always followed Garin's orders without hesitation. On the other hand, the bald and dark-haired women looked worried. I will arrange this, Garin said calmly. Letting the old guy do something at this time can be regarded as showing his level of strength. Otherwise, if you want to join forces with him, the previous strength is not enough. He didn't want his teammates to be killed first and then be beaten when he actually faced the enemy. If he can't even teach a modern mercenary organization a lesson, then he has to reconsider whether the other party has this value as an ally. We found him, Lay-by, the pony-tailed woman suddenly said. Catch up. Cohen was quickly brought up. He sat next to Galen like a little chicken and watched him call the old guy. Garin conveyed his wishes to AG, hoping that he would show some sincerity and qualifications as an ally. No problem, it's very simple, AG agreed easily. He also understands that it is very easy to simply deal with an organization without extraordinary power. Even Garin himself can do it easily. He could feel that there was an evil and powerful, terrifying aura about Garin. This breath and this power were not released at all just now. I've got the final page, do you want to take a look? AG continued. That's your thing. If you are willing, I would like to borrow it for a look, Garin naturally agreed. He was very interested in that high-end thing at first glance. Let's meet next time. Okay. After disconnecting the call, Garin took the replacement gloves sent by his subordinates. His gloves were rubbed to tatters when they were underground, almost exposing the skin of his arms. This was still the extent to which he paid attention to protection. If it were someone with a poor grasp of strength, the gloves would not be able to withstand a punch. Lay-by has appeared, bald head reminded in a deep voice. Oh, Garin looked up and saw a man standing straight in front of the motorcade with his hands raised. Two soldiers walked over and held down his arms, while two others pointed guns at him and escorted him towards the car. You are very brave. Do you want to talk to me directly? Garin smiled slightly, opened the car door and jumped out of the car to greet him. The other elites also got out of the car and followed behind him. Lay-by looked calm and natural, showing no signs of fear or panic. He just walked over without saying a word with his hands pressed behind his back. Sir, he said he wants to talk to you directly, a mercenary said loudly. Let him go. Garin waved his hand, he has no chance to resist in front of me. When the soldiers heard this, they did not hesitate and immediately let go of Lay-by, walked to the edge and formed a circle around him. But his eyes were still fixed on Lay-by, full of vigilance. Garin looked up and down at Lieber. The tattered military uniform all over his body could be seen to be the standard uniform of Nighthawk's peripheral mercenaries. His face was covered with stubble, his skin was rough and cracked, his lips were bloody, and his left arm was wrapped with a white bandage. The most special thing is that most of his face is covered by hair and beard. He is dirty and looks like a savage. But he exuded a capable and courageous aura. What do you want to say? Garin looked at this man with interest. You killed no less than 10 of my men, do you think I will be willing to let you go? Those are just ordinary peripherals. You can recruit a lot of them at will, and there is no loyalty at all. Lieber's voice is very magnetic, just like those radio hosts, giving people a gentle and soft feeling of comfort. And calm and unhurried. Even so, you gathered so many people and so many forces to rob and kill our Nighthawks, causing casualties among our members. The bald man lost one eye. Isn't this account false? Garin said lightly. That was just an accident. Lieber moved his arms and shoulders. I was gathering a gathering of important people from all the forces. Nighthawk's people suddenly rushed in and wanted to control all the leaders. The end result was naturally to turn against each other. You don't think I won't kill you if you explain it this way? Garin smiled. Of course not. Lieber smiled bitterly. Actually, even if you don't kill me, I won't live long. Just now, I was bitten by an African black lion, and I estimate that I only have less than half an hour to live. The smile on Galen's face slowly disappeared. The African black thread is a unique snake species in this world. It is a venomous snake species with no cure at all. It is a purely destructive toxin, and the latest developed antivenom must be used. It has to be injected in advance to have a certain effect, but if it is injected after being bitten, it is already too late. The time it takes for that serum to take effect is not as fast as the time it takes for the snake venom to take effect. So, what did you want to do here? I also have a daughter. She didn't know that I was doing such dangerous things. She always thought that I was just an ordinary international trader. What does that have to do with me? Garen said casually. I will exchange a secret with you in exchange for protecting her safety. Lieber hesitated. I have no choice, I don't have friends I trust enough. If I die, she will be eaten by my enemies. There are no bones left. The point is, she is very beautiful and young. If she can stay with you, I think she can at least survive. What a cold man. Garen laughed. I have a very complete set of information about you. That daughter is only 12 years old, but you are willing to hand her over to someone like me who doesn't know the details. Aren't you afraid that falling into my hands will make her worse? I will not misjudge you. Your character is not concealed. That kind of arrogance and disdain cannot be faked by ordinary people. And often truly arrogant people will not easily break their promises. Levi patted him in disguise. Flattery. Her mother's side is not an ordinary family, but a very orthodox business family, not involved in these gray and black parts. They abide by the law and have a good reputation. She has never understood the things I do, but she has always disdain for it. So she can't protect Elin. Are you so sure that I will agree to you? Garen asked. I'm just taking a gamble. Lieber shrugged. That secret involves the biggest secret of the Men in Black organization. This is also the biggest reason why I am far better than ordinary elite mercenaries. Oh? What is it? Garen suddenly became interested. He waved his hand to ask the surrounding men to retreat some distance away. About the lucky stone clock, the secret of the layer of mysterious power attached to it. Levi's voice was as thin as a gnat, but with Galen's hearing, he could clearly hear what he said. Not only the lucky stone clock, but also many other similar things, all have mysterious power attached to them. And we can use this power to a certain extent. Finally, Garen's heart was shaken. He knew that the power Lieber was talking about should be the potential energy he had been using. He always thought that only he could discover and use this power, but now, finally, someone new can use this power. How can you use it? That power, Garen's lips moved slightly, and the voice directly passed into Lieber's ears. Levi glanced at him in surprise, seeming a little surprised that he accepted it so quickly. We have a secret method that can absorb this power and store it in the body. It can quickly restore physical strength, injuries, and speed up metabolism. The more we absorb and use, the stronger and stronger the person's physique and energy will be. It will become more and more prosperous. We firmly believe that this may be a new way for human beings to evolve to a new level through themselves. He paused and said, if you are willing to agree to the deal, I will give you the set of secret techniques, along with the cultural relics and antiques that our Men in Black have collected over the years. Garen was already in shock at this time. The application mentioned by Levi was obviously the same as the effect of adding potential points to his physical attributes. But he carefully sensed and observed the situation in Lieber's body. This power seemed to be incapable of toxins, and was constantly swimming in his body like a living creature. In the totem world, he guessed that the potential value should be a kind of soul power, if that was really the case. The soul can be interpreted as consciousness to some extent. Human beings are divided into main consciousness and subconscious mind. The main consciousness manages daily life activities. The subconscious mind is responsible for allocating and regulating the body's resources and gathering and injecting energy where the body needs energy. If the potential value is a kind of soul power, then it can completely enhance both the main consciousness and the subconscious mind, and achieve the comprehensive improvement effect of improving reaction ability, nerve speed, body immune system resilience and other indicators. Are there any side effects? Garen suddenly asked. Lieber nodded, very calmly. Of course, it's not big. The side effect is that after absorbing the power from cultural relics and antiques, they will have different properties. Most of these powers are more or less harmful to people, and may lead to some weird hobbies, habits, or ailments. Garen guessed that this should be the biggest difference between them and himself. He has the ability to filter potential impurities to the extent that there are no sequelae, while these people can only absorb them roughly and eat all the beneficial and harmful ones. Go in, and problems will naturally arise. But he is indeed very interested in the filtering system for the operation of his own abilities. This is an opportunity to explore the origin of his abilities. Perhaps you can understand the main operating principles of your abilities from their secret techniques. Make a deal. He looked at the man in front of him and finally agreed.